Welcome to Commander Central. Today we're going to be taking a look back at EDH cards from 2017. Way back a year ago, when I had less gray hair, Chris still played multiplayer EDH, and Max was not yet a dirtbag who played Blood Bond in Commander. I'm Dana.
I'm Max.
And I'm Chris.
And in a minute we'll get to talking about games we played and maybe find out that I am the new dirtbag. We'll see what that'll be the Twitter poll this week.
I've handed the torch off.
Right, maybe. But before then, anything going on in anyone's life that's worth talking about? Not really. It's fall here, so although it's nice today, but it's dreary and everyone's just kind of getting ready for winter. I'm moving, so that's not a lot of fun either.
It was Halloween yesterday.
It was? Did you actually have any trick-or-treaters at your house?
I had the light off because I had to do show notes.
Oh, that's true. Right.
But I only heard the neighbor's door get knocked on twice. So
weird.
Did you and your son go out?
Oh yeah.
Did he get a lot of candy?
Oh yeah.
Nice.
You got to follow Dad's directions.
What did he dress up as?
A piece of pizza.
Oh,
nice.
Nice. That's a nice costume. My son thinks he said this is his last Halloween. He said he's done this year. This was his last one.
Really?
Yep. So we'll see. We'll see if that holds true.
When my parents made me stop when I turned 13.
And I don't care if he keeps going a few more years, but he on his own decided, I think I'm done after this year. This is the last one. So
it's easier. Just go buy the candy yourself and you don't have to do all the walking.
Kind of, right. But my wife and him went out and just in the neighborhood, and then I stayed home and handed out candy. And one of our cats, for some reason, likes to jump on my shoulder and ride around. And at some point before some kids came, she jumped up on my shoulder. So I was just petting her, and then the doorbell rang. I'm like, well, I might as well just walk. So I walked over and opened the door, and the cat sat on my shoulder as I'm handing out candy then. And then didn't get down, so I spent the next probably half hour handing out candy with a black cat perched on my shoulder, watching the whole time. And every kid who came by thought it was amazing.
That's a really realistic costume,
dude.
dude.
So I did not dress up, but somehow I still did because I had a cat on my shoulder the whole time. How about games we played this week? Max got quite a few in, I think.
I played 3, yeah.
Did you play Regnum Kravidal? Or was
I
it
did not play Regnum. I played Tajik, OG
Tajik.
Tajik.
Because you put the new changes in your deck.
Yep, I played 2 games with him, and he consistently took second every game.
That's Boros for you.
It's better than last.
So how did the new cards play?
I only got to see about 2 of them, yeah.
You tweeted out all the changes you made.
Yep, I made about half a dozen changes. I only saw 2 of them.
Okay.
And I did see Experimental Frenzy. I did put that in the deck. And I saw it, but I saw it off of a Sunbird Invocation trigger on a Worn Power Stone, so I couldn't play it. I really like Corvus Fury I put in there. That's the friend or foe red card from Battle Bond where all your friends discard their hands and draw that many +1.
So you wheel ahead, which is nice in Boros.
And then the foe is your foes take damage equal to the amount of cards in their hand.
Yeah, and which is solid. That's always going to do work.
Right. I mean, so I actually cast it right after Dana went, Read the Bones and Ambition's Cost in the same turn. Right. So I knew he had at least 10 cards in his hand.
Yeah, I took enough damage.
Yeah. So I think between the two opponents, I dealt 20 damage with that card and then drew 4.
Because then your comment was, this is going to stay in the deck.
This is going to stay in the deck. It's actually probably going to take Reforge the Soul spot.
Okay.
Same cost.
Sure.
Does better because it's one-sided.
You almost never get Reforge for the Miracle cost anyway because in that deck you have no way to manipulate it really.
And actually, in that instance, I had both in my hand.
Oh, sure.
But it was my first mulligan, so I didn't want to go down to 6 and borrow. So I'm like, well, I'll keep it. And so I'm like, well, I'd rather deal damage and draw cards versus have everybody refill their hands.
Right, because Reforge, everyone's refilling versus just yourself.
Otherwise, I do think Sunbird's Invocation is going to get pulled from the deck. It's
just too expensive for what it does?
It's 6 mana. It's expensive. It takes a whole turn. But the main problem is a lot of my deck is concentrated around the 3-drop spot. And every time last night, I think I'd cast a 3-mana spell, and I'd see 4 drops or lands. I did put the one from Battle Bond in where at the beginning of my upkeep, my opponents exile the top card of their library, and I may cast those till end of turn and spend mana of any color. I'm going to leave that one in because it does something similar. It kind of does an Atali thing, but they stay exiled. So if I don't want to cast it and I don't want you to cast it, it's just going to stay exiled.
And there's enough times you're going to just see a Swords of Plowshares or see a Path or see
Right.
something like that, a Brainstorm or something that you can actually utilize.
Yep. So I think I'm gonna cut Sunsbird Invocation for like probably another creature. I do need the new Tajik in the deck,
Okay.
and if the new Aurelia ever drops, I'd probably put her in there too. Or maybe I'll just grab a copy of like Resplendent Angel.
Yeah. Which is not cheap either.
That's not cheap either. I have one.
I'm just finding it amusing because you're like, if Aurelia ever drops, and I think Resplendent's more expensive than Aurelia.
Yeah. Oh well.
Well, I'll tell you my possible scumbag game. I think Max knows this, but I'm not sure if Chris was aware of what happened. So it was played my Recce History Combat at Gawa deck, 4-player game, and I kicked off fast. I think I turn 2 I played Recce and a Sylvan Library, because turn 1 I dropped Soul Ring and I believe Emerald Medallion. So then on turn 2 I was able to get Recce out and a Sylvan Library, and then turn 3 Azusa. And then I'd kept like 2 lands off of the Sylvan Library trigger, so I was able to ramp, Azusa out. And then I think on turn 4 is when I hit the Nissa flip, and I had enough lands at that point ready to flip her. And then with Sylvan Library, I can manipulate the top of the library to make sure it was a land every time with Nissa's ability too. So I was up to like 10 or 12 lands by turn 4 or 5, and had a handful of creatures out. And then somebody Wrath of God, but I had so many lands out, and I was already drawing so many cards anyway that I rebuilt and swung for some more damage, and then someone Supreme Verdict, and I rebuilt back up. So like basically it was a 3v1 the whole game up until turn 7 or 8 or whatever it was.
I think I know where this is going because I think I saw a tweet.
Yes, you did.
Okay.
So then what happened was the guy that was playing Doran played Elish Norn, but I had Kamal Fisticrosa sitting out. And I didn't say
This is not the first time I've seen a Kamal screw people over.
and
At
right,
least,
yes.
At least Blasphemous Act wasn't involved this time.
Correct. And I didn't say anything. I didn't point out the Kamal thing, but I said, you guys should remove that Elish Norn before it comes back to my turn. And I went to the second player's turn, and she didn't remove Elish Norn, and I'm like, you guys really should remove Elish Norn before it comes back to my turn. And I went to the player across from me, and he didn't remove Elish Norn, and it came back to me. And I'm like, well, I wonder if they have a counter spell. Let's see if someone has one. And I played Vernal Bloom to double all my forests. I went from the 14 mana I was making to 28, and no one counterspelled it. So I'm like, all right, well, no one's got removal or something in hand. I'm like, so I'm just going to start turning everyone's lands into 1/1 dudes. And they're like, wait, what? I'm like, I didn't do it. He did it. I believe I referred to the guy with Elish Norn as, I'm like, don't blame me. Blame that dead-eyed sociopath next to me. He played Elish Norn.
It's like you're taking a chapter out of my book of trying to tell people this is what you should do. This is what you should do. And then when that doesn't happen, you're like, I told you you should have done it.
So here's why I say it's not that. Number one, I didn't set it up. Somebody put me in that position because I have no board wipes in that deck anymore. All the stuff's just out of the deck. So I have no way to do anything with Kamal's ability to wreck lands unless somebody else enables it. So I didn't do it, and I warned everyone before I did it, and then I won the next turn too. So it wasn't like I killed their lands and made them like hang out for 15 minutes. The game was over in probably 4 minutes after that. However, I did do at least 2 of 4 players lost all their lands. So we'll tweet out and see if people think that was an underhanded scumbag Canadian type move.
Welcome to the team.
Yeah, right. I didn't feel remotely bad about it either.
Oh, no, you never do.
I didn't in that case because I'm like, everyone else enabled that. That was, you let me do that. So we will see what Twitter says about that. But I felt fine.
Yeah,
So.
you get used to it.
Your soul becomes hardened to such things.
I don't have one
You
of
become
those.
desensitized. Back in 2017 you did.
Yeah.
Any MVP cards you saw this week, Max?
I'm going to say Risk Factor.
You like risk factor worked for you.
It
I
did.
think I took the damage the first time you cast it against me.
I cast it against you and got you down to 5.
I was at 9 and took the 4 damage.
And then I swung at you, and then I casted it again against the other player because I'm like, he'll at least let me draw the cards because I was hellbent. But yeah, I got to draw 3 cards. It was great. I pitched a land for the discard, and
I'll be curious. That one game it definitely worked. I want to see how it continues to work, but it was effective.
I really do think it's very situational. I think it's going to be more of like a combat trick. Like, hey, Chris, you're attacking Dana, and it's going to put him at at 3. After damage, hey, Dana, do you want to take
Right,
4 or let me draw 3? It's very situational.
I still think it's a very viable red draw spell.
Yeah. I agree.
I don't even agree with the situational part. I just think it's very viable because red is lacking so much in card draw. And the instant speed that you can cast twice is, I think it's worth it.
I mean, it was really nice using the jumpstart because my hand was full of lands. It's like, okay, I'll get rid of these and find something to play.
Yep.
And if you hit the same person, okay, you can take 8, which, that's
10.
You're
can
playing
survive
red,
that,
which is aggro.
But there's times in that game where you can't do that.
That's 20% of their life total.
Right. And they know you have the ability to flash it back then or it's jumpstart it. But that's one of the things. If they're like, well, if I take 4 now, they're just going to do it again. So you kind of also have that in mind. They're like, I can't afford to take it because I'm just going to get domed again. So yeah, that card was really effective. The one I saw do a good amount of work was Seasons Past. Again, we mentioned this before, but I wanted to...
Don't ever play that card. It's bad.
I wanted to make the MVP card because I remembered not liking it when we first reviewed that set. And I think what I said was it falls in a bad spot. I'm like, I either want to run Regrowth or Eternal Witness that's much more efficient and just get 1 bomb card, or run something like Praetor's Council and get them all back, but I don't want to run something that gets you, 4 or 5 cards back for 6.
And then goes back to the library.
I'm wrong. I've never had that. I was totally wrong. I've never had that card cast against me where I wasn't just where it wasn't just deflating, where I just go, ugh. I just removed 3 of those threats in the last 4 turns, and now they're all back in that player's hand, in addition to a fetch land and something else.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's even a card that you don't have to build around.
Right.
It just automatically goes into a deck, and it's going to do you work.
Yeah. Right. You don't need to have a plan. It's just good in most decks.
Yep.
And I think what I killed with it this week, I can't even remember what the situation was, but it was a situation where I knew he had a way to stop me from removing the thing I wanted removed. So I had to bait out his counterspell first, then remove the card and pass a turn. And then he seasons past the thing that I was trying to remove. He seasons past it back, as well as 3 or 4 other things, including that counterspell. I'm like, man, all that work to get rid of that thing, and now he's back. He's further ahead than he was, essentially, aside from the mana he's spending. I got nothing to show for it.
I mean, a good way to even look at it is it's a 6 mana, draw 4 usually.
Yeah, right.
With 4 of your choice.
You think of it as a draw spell.
Yeah.
Yep. That goes back into your deck.
Yeah.
I have found, since I think out of the 3 of us, I'm the one that plays it the most. If I can get 3 things back, it's worth the 6 mana.
Right. It doesn't have to be a home run.
No.
If you just get a couple things back, it's probably almost always worth it.
Yep.
And in the deck I play it in my Dromoka deck, those 1-drop threats are still threats. I mean, it's a Sarah Ascendant, it's a Sarah Angel, Sarah Avenger, it's those low-costed flyers that are still 3/3s in the air.
Yeah. And it's almost always a fetch land coming back or something like that, or strip mine or something too. Just a really, really good card, and I thought it was appropriate to mention since we're doing kind of a look back at evaluations of cards from a year ago and how those have changed. Mine on that one has absolutely changed. So, where can you find us on social media if you have any comments about cards from 2017 or any other year that you think you evaluated poorly and want to tell us about?
You can find us on Twitter. As we were talking about, Dana posted the tweet about Elish Norn.
I did.
You can find us at CMDR Central. You can find us on the Facebooks. I'm going to change the name of that every week.
I love it.
By searching CMDR Central. You can find us on YouTube, where you'll mainly find our content and that kind of stuff. Search us up at CMDR Central. You can find us online at cmdrcentral.com.
And, of course, we are on Patreon by searching CMDR Central. And we have 3 new Patreon supporters to announce.
Shout out.
So thank you, Dylan Boom, Dan Beach, and Michael Woodyard.
Thank you guys very much for help keeping the lights on here at Commander Central.
Yep. And
this time you said their last names, and they were all easy last names.
I know, right? I got lucky. And generally, we want to thank everybody who has supported us or are still supporting us. I was running some numbers earlier, and I just realized it's been a year since we opened our Patreon.
Oh, wow, yeah.
So we just want to say thank you to everybody who has been supporting us the entire time or has supported us for some time. It helps a lot. It lets us do the stuff like the pins and the play mats and these giveaways we do every month.
Yeah.
So we really appreciate it, and it's going a long way.
We still have plans in the next probably 6 months-ish to move to video content as well. It's going to help us with some of that. So, yes, thank you very much for all the things that's let us do in the past and will let us do in the near future.
Speaking of Patreon, we have some contest winners to announce.
That time of the month.
It is that time of the month. Don't Google that.
Right, exactly.
So for Patreon, we are giving away the Commander 13 Mind Seas Precon deck.
Yes.
It's short, like 6 cards, but don't mind anything.
It keeps getting smaller.
I
and
know. I was
smaller.
like, what are we taking out now?
I like the island art.
we had to pull the command tower out to give the Dr. Mike for his deck we teched last week that didn't have one in his Aurelia deck.
So congratulations, Jason Weber, for winning that. So thank you for supporting us, and I will reach out to you via message when this airs to get an address, and we'll get that in the mail sometime next week.
Yeah, for sure.
For Twitter, we're giving away the 2 core set sample packs and the original Ravnica Life Spin Down cardboard counter featuring Sisters of Stone Death on it.
Yep.
And the lucky winner of that is Dan Kraus.
He's a
listener, Patreon supporter. We met him in Vegas.
Yeah.
So congratulations, Dan. Message me. I'll get your address. We'll get it in the mail.
For sure. All right. Cool. Very cool.
It's also time to announce the new contest.
Yes, indeed. We have a comically oversized card, as has been referred to give away again this month.
We do. So for Twitter, by retweeting any tweets we send using CMDR Thank, as in Thanksgiving.
I was trying to guess. I'm like, is he going to go with thanks, or is he going to go with Thanksgiving or turkey or something? All right.
I
was wondering if we got a vote on this one because I didn't hear anything about it. But apparently Max just comes up with them.
Yep. I don't do much during the day sometimes. So the winner of this drawing this month is going to get an oversized Aswan Jaguar from the Micro Pros. I don't even know what that is.
So I believe, if I remember correctly, that was like the very first digital Magic game. And I want to say this was back in like the late 90s.
So like Windows 95.
Yeah, seriously. It was like Windows 95 or 98 or something that you could, and I think it came on floppy disks, if I remember correctly.
Playing Diablo?
Right, basically,
Ooh.
yeah. But this card is not an actual real Magic card that you can buy and play in a deck. I'm guessing it was probably only for the game because this oversized one exists, but there's no normal size version of Aswan Jaguar or whatever this particular weird card is. So, and this one is actually even larger than most of the oversized cards.
It looks like it would have fit in an old PC software box.
Yes, actually, that's a good description. So, comically oversized Aswan Jaguar. That is a card. So, hey, we're going to give it away on Twitter.
And then for Patreon this month, as long as you are a subscriber or become a subscriber by the end of November, so November 30th, we are going to be giving away a Die Hard dice set. They're nice, really heavy steel dice. So the set comes with a randomized D20, a couple D10s, a D4, a D8. Chris is looking at me like I should know everything that comes in this.
They're not D10s. One's for a D100, one's a D10.
Well, there we go.
Says the nerd D&D player.
I knew he'd correct me.
It's like a percentile dice.
Gotcha. So yeah, we're going to be sending one of those out to whoever wins that drawing.
And speaking, this just popped into my head, Max, so I'm going to do this quick side anecdote. You talking about the days in November? My wife the other day was trying to figure out if there was 31 days in November or not. And she's like, what's that rhyme again? And I'm like, well, it's 30 days. It has September, April, June, and November. All the rest have 31, except for February because it's all janky. And she's like, that's not what it is. I'm like, no, but like that gets you there. That still has all the information. She's like, I'm not going to repeat that in my classroom to my kids and teach them that rhyme, except for February because it's all janky. Anyway, let's talk about some more Magic stuff other than just me who can't remember anything. But it works. It gets me there. I knew how many days based on my terrible rhyme.
I never remember. I just pull up my phone and open up the calendar.
I suppose nowadays, yeah, your phone, you can just do it in 3 seconds. You don't need to know a rhyme with janky in it. Where else could you find us online, Max, if you needed to buy a copy of Aswan Jaguar, which you can't because it doesn't exist outside of this oversized card?
So how about they go purchase some Season Pass?
There we go. Some Seasons Pass you could buy online.
At flipsidegaming.com, use promo code CMDR when you check out in all caps, and you'll get 10% off your order, and you help us out as well.
Yes. I do want to mention a couple things briefly. We got an email sent to us at cmdrcentral@gmail.com from Sean Brown. I'm not going to read the whole thing or even parts of it just because you guys don't really want to hear it, but that was super nice and very thankful of us for doing the cast, and we really appreciate that. That was like a really great thing to read earlier this week, was to see people actually appreciate the work we do. So thank you very much, Sean. And we got some really...
I was also thrilled to see that he's a veteran.
He is,
Yes.
I don't know how I can... God, there's got to be at least a dozen of them that I've played with over the past year that are veterans, and it's amazing to see that they're in the gaming community with us.
Oh yeah.
I would guess probably you're kind of stuck sometimes on barracks or even overseas, and there's not a lot of things you can get away and do.
Yep.
So video games and Magic might be your option. There's a few of the writers at EDH Rec that are vets too.
Are they?
Yeah.
Well, that's awesome. Thank you guys.
Yes, thank you.
We also got some really nice iTunes reviews in the last week or two.
Because we are on iTunes.
We are on iTunes. You can find us there, and that helps us a lot too. The 5-star review and just a well-written review for us as well does a lot. So thank you all very much for that.
Yes.
I think it's time to talk about 2017 in review here.
Okay, let's get the time machine.
Exactly, back when Max was innocent.
I've never been innocent.
Not really. So the reason we're doing this is because we've always in the past, like when we've done set reviews, threatened to, okay, after 3 or 4 months, let's go back and look at the set. But the reality is it's kind of tough to come back and say, let's do a second Ixalan review, because that's not a lot of fun for anyone. But if we can do a full year at once and go back and say, okay, this is what we said about this card, and now here's the reality of how it's played out, I think that would be a useful thing to do. So we're going to do it right now for 2017 and take a look back at it. And we will start with Aether Revolt, which was the first set of 2017 in January. Now, we weren't live then. Our show didn't go live until that spring, so there isn't any podcast I can go back to listen to see what we said. But we can look at the cards at least and kind of talk about what we thought about them at the time and maybe what our opinions are now. And I'll quick go over a list of the top 10 most popular cards in EDH Rec from that set to at least get an idea what people are playing from there, and we'll go from there. So the top 10 are Disallow, Paradox Engine, Rishkar's Expertise, Lifecrafter's Bestiary, Heroic Intervention, Baral, Chief of Compliance, Yeheni, Undying Partisan, Trophy Mage, Whir of Invention, and Walking Ballista. So there's obviously cards beyond that, but just from that top 10 list, is there anything that kind of jumps out at you guys as being higher than you thought or lower than you thought in terms of playability, or cards that you didn't like or still don't like that are on that list?
I'm surprised Disallow is the number one.
I'm not. A lot of people think they can play blue, but they really can't.
Well,
yes, that's a bash at all the standard and modern players I play with, but
I'm going to agree with both of those statements a little bit. So I was really high on Disallow when it came out because it's a Void Slime in blue, where usually you have Cancel, which is of course an amazing card.
It is. See the EDH Rec article
right.
about Cancel.
But
between the margins.
In the margins.
In the margins. Wow, I butchered that one.
Just a little bit, but it's a counter spell and a stifle, so you can counter an activated ability, triggered ability, or a spell. That looks great on paper, and it is a good card, I think. 3 mana is a lot to leave open. At least it is now. Maybe once upon a time I didn't think it was. I don't love leaving 3 mana open though, and if your deck is dedicated draw go, that's probably a lot easier. But if you're just one of those decks running like 5 or 6 counter spells just to solve problems, which I would guess is most decks that have counter spells, you're not like dedicated to like countering everything. You're just like, I'm playing blue white. I need to stop something now and then, so I'm going to throw a few counter spells in here. That gets tricky to leave that many mana free. So
especially with a double blue.
Right.
Especially with a double blue. So I kind of am also a little bit surprised it's up that high. I like the card, but I don't think it's the best or should be the most played card in this set.
Now, do you think it could be maybe the influx of new players into Commander?
I think there's a degree of that, because if you've only been playing the last 2 or 3 years, that to you looks like the best counterplay you've ever seen.
Yep.
Especially
or
if
one that you can afford.
Or at least you can afford, right. And, old Counterspell, I guess, has been reprinted a few times, but
Mana Drain, all the other really, really good
you
ones.
can't afford Force of Will, and you might not know Arcane Denial exists. You might not even know that
mystical confluence or mystic
Right.
confluence exists.
or delay or
But
or
up until
whatever.
recently, you couldn't afford Mystic Confluence.
Right.
Right.
either.
Yeah, that was expensive too. So yeah, I think a lot of that is probably just relatively newer players or players on a budget because it's like a $2 card or something that people probably just have in their binders from playing during that set.
The one that I'm surprised this really isn't number one is Paradox Engine. I really thought that would have been number one for that set.
I expected to see that at number 1 as well.
My guess for Paradox Engine is it's one of those cards where people were like, oh my God, it's so awesome. I'm putting it in my deck. They play and they win with it twice. And they're like, okay, well, I've done that. It's not that much fun. And they pull it out. Although it's not that far behind Disallow in terms of decks it's in. But I think that's why it's not number one. And I would bet if you look back at this list in like 3 or 4 years, it would probably drop down even further just because it's one of those cards, I think, like Primal Surge, which is out of Innistrad, I think, where you just play permanents on
From
top of your
Amazon
library.
Restored, yeah.
It's really easy with Primal Surge in a lot of decks to just put your whole library out.
I did it like
and win the
3
game.
times and actually found it more irritating to flip my
Right,
library
exactly.
than
And then
So
you're
many
like,
triggers, so many triggers.
and oftentimes you just win with it too. But
Right.
it's one of those cards where you're just like, okay, I've done it a couple times and I'm done with it.
It's boring.
I did the same thing. I had it in my Sigarda deck for a while. I won like 2 games with it, and I'm like, okay, I don't ever care if I do it again.
Yeah.
So I feel like Paradox Engine does a little bit of that where people play it and then they kind of lose interest. Rishkar's Expertise.
garbage card.
Best green card ever.
It might be the best card it's one of the best cards of 2017, I would say. And I think we said as much last year in our year in review show.
Oh yeah, it's really, really good.
And I think we all liked it when it came out. I don't remember us saying anything.
Yeah,
We liked it, but I think we underrated it maybe even.
I think we underrated it, but we did like it because unlike something like Soul's Majesty,
It scales down.
it scales down.
right.
I think it was more of us comparing it to the other high CMC draw spells in green, the one that draws for each creature you control.
Shamanic Revelation.
Yeah, and the other one that does the same thing, but then you get Ferocious on it.
That's Shamanic Revelation.
Collective Unconsciousness, I think, is the one where you draw for each
Yep,
creature.
we compared it similar
Yeah.
to that because they're the same CMC, but I guess we really didn't factor in the ability of Rishkar's Expertise.
Right. I mean, being able to put the free card down is so much gravy on top of that potato.
And unlike the other Expertise, I mean, that's a 5-drop or less. Unlike the other
Yeah.
ones where it's 3 or less or 4 or less, those are game changers at the 5-drop spot.
So you play Rishkar with like Craterhoof out, and you have like 30 creatures, and then you play the 5-drop Shamanic Rev, and then draw another 30.
Yeah.
Oh, so good.
But even if your creature's just a 3/3 or something, that's still not bad value
Right.
because you're still drawing 3 cards and then putting something in play for free. Like the worst case scenario is almost always still pretty good at that card.
Agreed.
Now the next one is one that I remember us liking a lot, and I've fallen off on, and that's Lifecrafter's Bestiary. Now, Max, you ran it for a while. What was your experience with it?
I ran it in Jamocha for better part of this past year, actually. I think I just cut it recently in the last month or two. It's good. The scry
It
was
is.
good
Yep.
in Jamocha because for the past year I was having like gas issues, essentially keeping the cards
Sure.
flowing, not getting flooded. That was nice, but having to like prepare yourself to remember to pay that green when you
Yeah.
cast something, and in a deck where most of my creatures are 4 to 6 CMC, it's almost a reverse Ristic Study. Like
Sure.
I have to pay the 1 to draw a card.
That was my experience with it as well. I felt like I'm spending 3 mana, and then all my spells get more expensive. And you're drawing a card, but like
Right.
it just felt clunky, I think is the word I would use.
It felt better when I had like Mirari's Wake out because it's like, okay, all my stuff is tapping for 2. I don't care. We have a couple people who have them in like mono green decks, and it just does work.
And I can see, particularly if your deck is low CMC stuff, like if you're playing elves or something, or like blue-green merfolk maybe, and you're regularly playing 1 and 2 drops, you probably get those turns where you're like, well, I've got 9 mana and I've got 3 1 and 2 drops in my hand, so I can afford to blow 3 extra mana and draw 3 cards.
And refill your hand.
Right. Whereas in your Jamocha deck, like, I'm playing a 6-drop, so I guess I'll pay 7 maybe,
And that's it.
and that's it. And it's just, it feels way less impactful in that kind of deck. If it was Boros, this is a white card or a red card activated ability, it would be in every deck I played. But in green, it's just it feels lackluster.
Yeah.
So I was excited about it, but I've found it underwhelming. Now the next card on the list, I distinctly recall completely skipping over when the set came out. It was probably 2 months before I even was like, wait, what card is that? What, really? Like I skipped past it entirely when the set came out, which is Heroic Intervention.
Garbage card.
Garbage fire.
Do you guys remember what your thoughts were when it came out?
Garbage card.
It was,
That's
yeah,
literally what my thoughts were.
Well, because green had a history there where there was usually in like every couple sets some green, uncommon usually, that felt like a draft card that gave your creature hexproof and +1 till end of turn, or gave a creature indestructible and +1/+1 or something. And so I think I kind of like thought this was that card or something, or I don't know what it was, but that's what it felt like to me. It was that one draft card that you used for a combat trick, but didn't have a place in EDH.
But hexproof
That's
and
not true.
indestructible
Yeah.
at instant speed is just nuts.
Both of those things
For 2 mana.
for 2 mana. And we're talking about that Recce game where I killed all the Kamal lands. At one point in time, someone went to kill just Recce, and I'm just going to Heroic Intervention that to say so I can keep drawing my cards this turn. Because even if you just save one creature for 2 mana, it's still probably almost always worth it.
Yeah.
Let alone the ability to flex up and save your entire board against a Wrath or whatever.
Or an insurrection.
Yeah, right.
Oh, no.
That
doesn't
isn't
target.
targeted, but most of the steel stuff is targeted. So.
Right.
So anything else on the list you guys want a quick mention? We don't want to spend too much time here just on Aether Revolt, but there's a few other cards that did make the top 10 that are worth just pointing out. Shram, Winding Constrictor, Scrap Trawler. Spire of Industry is the land that I'm actually surprised isn't a little bit higher. I think that should be in every single Brea deck, especially because it fixes. It's essentially a City of Brass, basically, that you need to have an artifact in play for.
Yeah,
Yep.
any type of artifact deck should be running it.
Just
because
one artifact, too.
It doesn't tap for color. It taps for colorless. So worst comes to worst, you have no artifacts out. You're not hindering against your commander's colors.
Right. Now, maybe you don't need it in a 2-color deck because you have good lands, but like almost always in a 3-color deck, a land that can make you any color and doesn't come into play tapped is worth it. And if you're in an artifact deck where you're just always going to have one thing in play, and if you don't, maybe you don't care. Maybe at that point, if somehow someone's got your Brea deck to a point where you have no artifacts out, maybe you've just lost anyway. You're already so far behind it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
So that's one I'm a little bit surprised we haven't seen more of. And Hidden Stockpile was one that was uncommon at the time that lets you sacrifice a creature for 1 mana
To scry.
to scry, which is just a really useful sack outlet. It's only 2 to cast. That's another one that I remember us kind of commenting on, that's useful, but I've seen it in quite a few decks.
I'm still not a fan of it due to the fact that the only way you get the creature is if it's your turn.
Yeah, the revolt
Yes.
is on your turn.
Yep.
I actually play that in Regna and Krav, and that's the issue I run into is the fact that I have to trigger the revolt, I need to do it on my turn.
Yep.
So it's a lot of planning ahead.
And also we're playing Commander where we have access to every good sack outlet ever made, so there's a lot of competition. But I feel like it's right on the edge. If you don't have a Phyrexian Altar or something that might be bumping it out, then that would probably work in that slot. So that's a card I like, but it's been interesting to see that pop up in quite a few decks too. So what's your personal favorite card from the set, do you guys think? Do you have one? Or have we already mentioned it?
We for sure mentioned my real favorite, which would be Rishkar's Expertise.
Yeah.
I'm so over that set.
You played
Standard,
a lot
oh
of
my
Standard
God.
with it because that dominated Standard.
Yes. I don't even want to think about that set anymore.
Yeah, that was the set with Fatal Push, and I mean, there's a
Yep.
lot of Standard play cards
I
in
suppose
there.
if I had
Ballista.
to pick, it would be Fatal Push.
Oh, yeah.
I'm with you, Max. Rishkar's Expertise, particularly in Commander, is my favorite card from that set, and that's going to be around a lot of years. So after we left Kaladesh, we moved to Amonkhet in April of 2017, and that was also before we recorded, so we don't have an old show to go back and listen to. So Max, what are the top 10 cards from Amonkhet that show up on EDH decks and EDH Rec?
So the top 10 are going to be Anointed Procession, Fetid Pools, Pull from Tomorrow, Scattered Groves, Irrigated Farmland, Canyon Slow, Sheltered Thicket, Cascading Cataract, As Foretold, and Vizier of the Menagerie.
So 6 of those top 10 are lands.
Yes. I
was
would
gonna
really
say, yeah, it's a lot of lands.
I would really like to see this list if you take the lands out. Because they're fetchable duels that also cycle. They're going to be in every deck that they can be in.
Yeah.
So I would really like to see this list if you take those lands out and see what replaces them.
And I think the next 3 or 4, On the other notable card list I have here, which is Throne of the God Pharaoh, Approach of the Second Sun, Lord of the Accursed. I think those are like in the 12 through 15-ish slot or so. We also had for notable cards. Well, first before we go on to notable cards, let's talk about that top 10 because it will be pretty easy to talk about since they're all lands. Anointed Procession at number 1. That doesn't surprise me at all.
No.
It's Parallel Lives in white. If you're playing a token deck, that gives you another one if you're in Selesnya or something. But there's plenty of token decks that were like black-white tokens or something. I've seen those decks that gave you your first real token doubler. It's just a good card, and I'm really not at all surprised to see it up there.
Right.
And then, we have all those lands. Then you have As Foretold, which is a solid card, but also a little surprised to see that in the top 10.
I think Amonkhet in general doesn't have a lot for like EDH. I don't feel like it was a very EDH-ish set.
Well, I felt like, and we'll probably touch on this in a few minutes, I felt like Hour of Devastation, which was the small second set, had way more EDH cards in it than did Amonkhet.
Right.
So moving past the top 10, because it's aside from the cycling lands, which are all really, really good, and I would imagine I will be putting those in most of my 2-color decks. Unlike like the Shadows over Innistrad lands that I don't run.
Or the Scry lands.
The Scry lands I tend to not run either anymore. The cycling lands being fetchable and being able to pitch to draw a card, that is really, really useful. So I think those are going to be staples moving forward, but there's just not much else to say about them.
Right.
Are there any cards that are not in that top 10 that are like on the other notable list we have here that you guys think are really interesting or that maybe you're rated up or down when you first saw them? The Monument Cycle, I think, I remember us kind of talking about like, oh, those are useful. I've seen a lot of Monuments in decks.
I like them. I mean, I think each one does something specific that color likes to do.
Yeah.
I mean, I play the white one in Tajik. I don't play the red one yet, but I probably should because it's just a looting card.
Right.
I mean, it reduces your creature's cost and you get something else on top of it.
I had them buy the white and black one, both in my Tesa deck. I still run the green one in my Reki deck. Number one, it's a legend, so it draws me a card, but being able to, those turns when I play 5 or 6 creatures, buff something else up by, 12 or 14 or something is really, really useful too. And it's a mana rock, essentially. It saves you a mana for each creature you cast. So yeah, those were ones I didn't think they were bad, but I kind of maybe blew past them a little bit when they first came out. And I have played quite a few of them, and I've seen a lot of them in decks. One card I liked a lot, but I have not seen much play is Harvest Season.
It's one that doubles all your tokens.
It doubles all your tokens. Wait.
No, Harvest Season is the one where it's 2 and a green. Search your library for the amount of basic lands equal to the number of tapped creatures you control. Or up to the amount of tapped.
So really, you don't need to have that many creatures out. I mean, if you're just playing any kind of a creature deck swinging with like 3 or 4 bodies, or even 2 bodies, if you're swinging with 2 bodies, it's explosive vegetation at that point.
Well, it's cheaper than that because
Right,
it's
yeah.
3 and they both go into play tapped.
Right.
So it's a better cultivate, essentially, or a better Kodama's Reach.
But there's a huge upside on it if you're playing some kind of a token deck where you're frequently swinging with 5 or 6 guys or more sometimes. But I just have not seen it. I don't think I've ever seen anyone cast it before.
I ran it in Gihiji, and the few times when it worked, it was
Monstrous.
game-changing. Yeah.
Right.
But it also, especially in 3 colors, you really need to decide then, okay, if you're running Harvest Season over something like Kodama's Reach, you need to adjust your land base so you can scoop out 5 to 10 basics.
Yeah.
Not just, I'm only running like 4 or 5 of each. You need a good chunk of basics in a deck to make it
fetch
worth
for
it.
that Harvest Season.
Yeah.
Yeah. Approach the Second Sun is the new
Lab Man.
It's super. I mean, I've just seen it. It's the new card that goes in Dirtle decks.
I'm honestly surprised it's not in the top 10.
I kind of am too.
I think it's just a good life gain card in general. If you never cast it again throughout the game, the first time's worth it.
You at least get something off it then.
And you're always threatening the win because at any point you could draw it and play it.
But that's also the problem is if you don't have a plan for it, then everyone's like, oh, they can't risk you drawing it and casting it again. So then you become such a focus that you really have to have a deck that's equipped
I'm surprised
to deal with it.
I haven't seen that in a Pillow Fort deck. to be honest with
like
you.
in some kind of an Angus Mackenzie or like an Oral Pillowfort.
A win con, because you're already locking out the game, so they can't really get at you, and why not just end the game immediately with one card?
I've seen it in one of the Bant Enchantress decks that was very Pillowforty, and that was basically the win con in the deck, which is not a lot.
It's an Enchantress deck.
Yeah, but you because you're spending so much time just watching them make masks and stuff that it becomes, it's not a lot of fun. That's when it feels like Lab Man.
Yeah.
You're just watching somebody else play with themselves for 10 minutes at a time trying to find approach. But it's not a terrible card. I just think that it's why it's like Lab Man is I think it's a shortcut if you don't know how to win a game. I'll just throw in Lab Man and I can draw down with some infinite combo, or I don't know how to win with this Estra deck, so I'm just going to throw an approach and hopefully draw it at some point.
See, that's why I like dedicated Lab Man decks, because their deck is set up to, this is how
Sure.
I'm going to win. Either you stop me or
Right.
it goes off.
Yeah. And I think there's a big difference between a dedicated Landman deck and someone just being like, hey, I draw a lot of cards and
Yep. I win.
Oops, I win.
Yeah.
I think Combat Celebrant is a card that I remember seeing and being like, oh, that's decent. And I've seen Combat Celebrant in a lot of different decks.
So good.
And you've got it in one of yours, I believe.
Have it
Max,
in Tajik. Yep.
And By Force is a not as good Shattering Spree, essentially. But I like By Force a lot, too. So if you've got one, I think I run them both. I run Shattering Spree and By Force in my Lathless deck. So I think that's a solid card.
Scared of artifacts?
That's something I can destroy in mono red. and I'm running
A braid.
I'm going to do it, and I'm going to do it
braid
right.
in there. Yeah, and I'm also running liquid metal coating in that deck, so I can turn anything into an artifact. So I have a higher than normal amount of artifact removal.
Yep.
Number one, it's never dead. There's always someone with a soul ring or something you can blow up. So you're never wasting artifact removal, but being able to turn stuff into artifacts is useful in that deck. It's mono red. Any personal favorite cards from this set?
Hazoret the Fervent.
You played a lot of that in Standard.
And in Modern.
And in 1v1.
And in 1. I played it a lot. I love that card.
How about you, Max?
Any of the cards that just say cycle on them. I mean, this is the set that brought cycling back.
Yes, that was nice to see.
So, I mean, even if you put a couple of those cheap instants into like a borrow stack, most of them have cycling. So if you don't want to cast it because your board's empty, you can at least get rid of it to draw.
Right. Now, I thought the disappointment in this set, and we weren't really high on them when they came out, but none of the gods are in the top 10.
Only 2 of them are any good.
Yeah, they're...
I'm going to get harassed hard
No,
for
you're-
saying
I
that.
don't
No,
But
you're not.
Hazoret is...
I think Hazoret and Ronus are the 2 best of the cycle.
Yeah.
And even Ronus is basically a not good Nylea. It's not as good as Nylea.
No.
And really, as good as Hazoret is, Hazoret is not as good as Perforos.
No. I do like the ability of Hazoret, though, to just pitch like your crap in red
Yes.
that you have in your hand and shoot every player on the table for 2.
Well, at least Hazoret is kind of unique, whereas
Yep.
Ronus is definitely just a not as good Nylea. So, skipping past Amonkhet to July of 2017, that was when Hour of Devastation came out. This was the last set in this list where we were not recording, so we don't have anything we can go back through and go over our reactions.
We started doing our practice episodes.
We did, yep.
Around this time.
I think we did a review as a practice episode for this set.
Because we
didn't.
launched in August
Yeah.
of 2017.
So, Chris, what are the top 10 cards being played in EDH Rec from Hour of Devastation?
We'll start with number 1, Ramnep, Excavator. The next one, Dana's favorite card, Torment of Hailfire. Mirage Mirror, Razaketh the Foul-Blooded, Scavenger Grounds, Hour of Revelation, Neheb the Eternal, the Locust God, Swarm Intelligence, and the old big bad, Nicol-Bolas.
The God Pharaoh.
So number one, this list looks better because there's not 6 lands taking up slots. So any observations on this top 10 list before we move on?
I think Scavenger Grounds should be higher.
Well, first of all, I just want to say every one of those is an interesting EDH card for the most part.
Yep.
Yes.
Which is why I made that comment that I felt like this was a better EDH set. Those are all cards that I see in decks fairly regularly. Excavator, number one, Chris, said it was obvious. I'm not at all surprised it's there.
Nor am I.
It was at the point, that's when Crucible Worlds was like $80 or something
Crucible
like that.
This was before the Crucible reprint.
Yep.
So that was your bargain basement Crucible.
Yeah, might as well play it.
Yeah. And in the decks that want it, they can recur it if it gets destroyed. So.
And a lot of times, this is one of those cards too where if you're that person who just started playing in Kaladesh or something and you've got a excavator from cracking a pack in a draft, you're like, I'll just put it in my green deck. It probably is fine. Like, even if you don't have a plan for it and you've only got a couple of fetch lands and, a Field of Ruin or something for land destruction, you probably still wind up bringing back 1 or 2 lands, whether it's a cycling land or one of those land destruction lands or something. It probably pays for itself in a casual deck, even if you don't have a plan. And if you have a plan,
it's just that much better.
It's that much better. Right, exactly. We've talked about Tormented Hailfire a bunch on here. But it is like aside from me being a weirdo about not wanting to cast it, it should be it should be there. Like, it's a game-ending card regularly.
And when you look at the numbers, it's not that far off from overtaking Excavator.
Right.
It's only a few hundred away. So,
and we talked about things like as good as expertise is for drawing you so many cards and what have you. You eventually probably oftentimes win the game with a good risk card expertise. You just win the game at that point in time immediately. The game just ends when you're doing Torment for 17 or something. And in black, whether it's from Cabal Coffers or whatever, it's pretty easy to get that much mana out and just end the game. Yeah, I mean, the power level on that card is just bonzer. Mirage Mirror's next, which we've talked about too. Like
so broken.
You can keep going on the list. Razaketh, I
have not seen a lot of those.
I took it out of my Tesa deck. I ran it in Tesa because I just won the game with it. Like, when I would play it, I would just be over.
When I read this list doing my notes last night, I'm like, why is it so high? And then I'm like, oh wait, it's just a combo enabler. You get it on, you sack something, and you find find your Tormented Hellfire,
right.
You find anything, and you win the game.
Right.
And I think he's pretty big in like the CEDH road too.
Yes.
So that kind of makes sense.
Scavenger Grounds at 5. I mean, I think we all agree that should be higher.
Yep.
And probably will be. I think people are coming around on how important Graveyard Hate is.
I wonder why.
We're making a lot of a lot of friends by saying that though too.
But yeah, that's that card is a staple. As much as maybe I sometimes say I don't like to say the word staple about cards because I like seeing you try to build a unique deck. I have Scavenger Grounds in every single one of my decks, and I've put a few additional deserts in so I can use it more than once. It's that good, and people should be running it. And here's how deep this bench is for cards. Hour of Revelation is a great card, and that's like a number 6.
I got to cast one of those off of a Tali last night.
Nice.
Yep. And then I flashed in Archangel Absent.
Yeah, I mean, there's just Neheb generates crazy amounts of mana in red. The Locust God, both in like Nekuzar decks is great, but as a commander, does a lot of damage as well.
Or even
It'd be awesome in a Niv Mizzet deck.
I was going to say, in
the
any
new
of
Niv
the
If it could be a
Mizzets.
Niv Mizzet, it would be great, yeah.
It could be a Niv Mizzet.
He's right colors. Yeah, he's right
only
colors.
blue and red, yeah.
That's right. So that's the one that's great in a deck and as a commander.
Yep.
Swarm Intelligence. I mean, I'm
Bad card.
I'm playing it in Talrand,
Ugh.
but it always does something broken. Unlike, here's the difference between Firebird's and Vacation. I know red needs the ability more, but you're also it's chaotic. You can't control it.
Right.
Swarm Intelligence always generates me value in that Talrand deck, and oftentimes a lot of value in that deck.
Yep.
Because I can control it. I know the spell I'm going to copy. And then Nicol Bolas is just Nicol Bolas. It's a good card, but I think a lot of that's probably flavor. People wanted their Bolas deck, and he's just in their
They
Bolas
wanted
deck.
another Bolas,
Yeah. So, but even beyond that, you get down into Hour of Promise, the Desert, Solemnity, Abrade, Angel of Condemnation, Pride Sovereign in every kitty cat deck. Jeru, I built a deck around.
Yeah.
That's a deep list of EDH cards for a small second set. So, what's your personal favorite out of here from either of you guys?
The Scorpion God. Oh, but he's not on the list.
That's how deep this list is. Scorpion God and Scarab God both aren't on that top list.
Right. I don't personally run it, but I really like the Locust God. I think it's, like we just said, it can be the commander, it can be in the deck.
Yeah.
And either way, it's going to do you work every time you play it. Especially because all those gods, they hit the bin and you bring it back.
Right.
That is the best thing about them.
Yep. I mean, I don't know what I would pick for my favorite. Probably Mirage Mirror. I think it's a fun card because it lets you show off while you're playing, which I kind of like. You making smart decisions with Mirage Mirror feels good and it advances the game based on your skill. I think that's why I don't like Torment, because Torment feels like you're just blindly you have a bunch of mana, you just win, which is fine. But like for me,
This
I want
is
to.
still my argument
know.
for you is just take
win.
out Cabal Coffers.
Right. I get it.
And then you lose the temptation of doing it.
Sure. Then I just don't run it then. But that's what I like about Mirage Mirror. It lets you kind of show off your abilities as a player. So I am a fan of that card. Was there anything from the set that you thought that you liked and wound up being kind of underwhelming or anything like that?
I have 2.
Okay.
My first one is Angel of Condemnation. So this is
Agreed.
the O-Ring Angel. I was really hyped on this. It went in Jamocha to clear out the few flying blockers I might run into. But the fact that you have to tap it, it just takes away the purpose, where I'd rather just run a removal spell or a better creature. And my second one is Solemnity.
That's mine.
I think it might just be our meta, but a lot of people are like, "Oh, this is a really good card. It's going to do really broken things in a good and bad way." And I think maybe our meta just adapted to it. Be like, okay, we did it. Kind of like Primal Surge and those type of cards. We did it once or twice. That's cool. We don't need to do it anymore.
That's exactly what I did with it. I had it in my Sphinx deck for a while, and there were a couple of games where, hey, I've got Glacial Crevice or Glacial Chasm out. It's not going to get countered. It's just going to sit there until you deal with it. And what else was I using it with? I had a Dark Depths in there as well. Yep. So I put Dark Depths in because I put in Solemnity. So I did a couple of those things at that point in time.
Chris just has this blank stare in his eyes.
And I already have Mystic Remora in the deck as well. So there was just
that's the one I was thinking of, and then you said Dark Depths, and I'm like,
yeah. So there was a couple things that were fun to do with it. But after I did them once or twice, where I had that, hey, Glacial Chasm's here all game, and I have 2 counter spells in hand, so unless you drop a Strip Mine, you're just not attacking me till I'm ready for that to happen. I did it a few times and it was fine, and then I just didn't want to do it again.
Right.
In part because it then limited the other things I could do. I couldn't put counters on Sphinx of Athun. I couldn't put counters on. I had one more Sphinx that got counters. I can't remember what it is.
Jarwile.
Yeah, no, I don't remember what it was. But whatever it was, it limited me from doing a few other things. There was one of the ones that was from Amonkhet that came back from the graveyard with whichever Sphinx it was. So there was enough times when it was fine, but it also maybe limited me a few times. And I was like, yeah, I don't need it in the deck. So I took it out, and I don't think I ever saw anybody else really playing it.
I've seen a few in the shop.
A couple,
I think
yeah.
We have a Hannah deck that has it in there.
Okay.
I really haven't even seen them a lot in the wild. Like when we go to GPs or stuff, I think it's just the people who want it have it because they want to win right away.
Yeah.
I had some guy building some weird jank modern deck with it. I think what he was trying to do was suspend cards, but I don't think they get counters, so they immediately come off of suspend, and it didn't work out well for him. I know that.
That's a lot of moving pieces to have together, all work out at once. Yeah, I can see how that would be not so great in modern. Then we moved to August, Commander 2017, and this was the first show we actually reviewed. So I went back and listened to the show, see what we talked about in terms of cards.
In our youth.
So let's go on the list here of the most played ones. Number 1 is Path of Ancestry, which is more than twice as much as the next card. Now some of that's like the pre-con effect, where someone just puts their pre-con online because every deck had it. But it's also a really good card in every tribal deck for the most part, so that doesn't surprise me. Then you have Herald's Horn, Teferi's Protection, Kindred Discovery, Hammer of Nazan, Kindred Dominance, Traverse the Outland, Bloodline Extramancer, Disrupt Decorum, and Miri Weatherlight Duelist. So anything from that list you guys want to comment on?
They're all good cards. I mean,
they're all pretty good cards, and they all are cards that go in a wide variety of decks for the most part.
What I found really interesting about this list is that the only legendary creature
is
Miri.
Yeah.
Rounding out the 10.
Yeah.
But she's extremely powerful for a Selesnya deck.
And I think she also slots in with both as a commander and in a token deck maybe to make her stuff tough to deal with as well. So I think she has some versatility, and she's in the cat deck. So like you can either build her as your commander, or you can put her in your token deck, or she's just part of the was it Arabo?
Yep.
Commander deck. So yeah, she probably goes in the most ones. Teferi's Protection. So I listened to all our comments about it, and we all said great. Chris and I both loved it. Max didn't like it. Did you listen to the show?
No.
Yeah. So you're like, if anyone's playing this card in a year, I'm going to give my cards to Chris and Dana. So
Well,
we will collect on that bet after the show. No, you did. All of us were like, oh, this is a really good card. It's going to see a ton of play. And I think we underrated it.
yeah.
We gushed.
There was no underrating this card.
like-
it was just that good.
We gushed about it. Don't get me wrong. When I'm saying we underrated it, wasn't like we were like, oh, it's fine. It's quite good. We were all really, really hyped on it. And I think we were underrating it still.
And I still don't see a lot of them, and I think that is strictly a price point.
I think it's a price point issue.
Like, it's been printed twice now, and one of them is a judge foil.
I'm trying to, I have right now 3 white decks, and I've got a Teferi's Protection in all 3 of them. And I have a tough time imagining a situation where I would build a white deck and I wouldn't run it. Maybe there is one. But for the most part, it does so many different things, and it does them so well, and it's so game-changing at the right point in time, while simultaneously kind of having that heroic intervention thing where, like, it's worth casting if someone goes to remove one thing. If someone goes to remove your Wormcoil Engine, it's probably worth casting to save your Wormcoil Engine for 3 mana and a card, to be able to then crack back next turn to that Wormcoil Engine. But that's the worst case scenario. The best case scenario is someone goes to Supreme Verdict to your board state and you just check out.
Or Rift,
Or Rift, or go for the Alpha Strike on you, leaving themselves wide open because they're like, well, he can't crack back because I'm going to kill him. Teferi Protection. I mean, it does so many things.
They play Avacyn. Then they play Armageddon. You path their Avacyn and then play Teferi's Protection.
Right,
Go,
yeah.
What?
Yeah. And not only does it do a bunch of things, they almost always look cool. Like, the plays you make with it are almost always like memorable, interesting plays.
this is why I think it's so good. First, it's a single white pip.
Easy to cast.
So you can put it in a 5-color deck and you'll still cast that card with no problem.
It has that kind of cyclonic rift thing going on where it's ridiculously powerful, and if you are in that color at all, it's easy to cast, just period. That's why Rift is so versatile. Even if you're in 5 colors, as long as you have a couple lands that can make blue, Rift is easy to cast. This is the same way. If you're in 5 colors, it's still easy to cast.
Right.
We should not be comparing this to Rift, though. I think Rift is way more powerful.
I think I would agree with that, but I'm just saying, like, that's one of the strengths of Rift, too, is it's easy to splash in any deck that can play blue. This is the same way. It's super easy to splash.
Now, versus each other. Teferi's Protection's more powerful.
Yeah.
Yes.
Head-to-head, that's a matchup
Yep.
where protection wins. But, like, one card I always look at, I like True Conviction a lot in decks. It changes games as well. Being trip white makes it difficult to put in some decks. That isn't the case with Teferi's Protection. You can just put it in your deck that's white.
Right.
Or Insurrection is, backbreaking as Insurrection can be. Trip red is really tough to cast sometimes. This just floats by. So that's a card I think we loved, and it's wound up being better than we thought it would be even. Kindred Discovery we didn't really talk about in the show. We talked about like 3 of the Kindred cards,
But
and
not the blue
not
one.
the blue one. And for those who don't remember, it's 5 mana, 2 blue and 3. And whenever a creature of the chosen type comes into play or attacks, you draw a card.
It's or attacks, too?
Yeah.
It's or attacks and
So
or comes into
busted.
play.
I wonder if maybe we just overread it.
Maybe.
We missed the or attacks
Yeah,
part.
maybe. Because it's essentially, I mean, if you're in a tribal deck, of course, it has to be tribal because you're picking a creature type. Although you don't, if you've got a bunch of humans in a deck, you can still probably get away with it.
Or if you're making a bunch of Drakes and a Talon deck.
Right, like in my Talon deck, it's
You don't name
game over.
Merfolk?
I do not name Merfolk. I name Drakes.
It's Wizard.
Isn't he a Merfolk?
He
wizard?
is a Merfolk
I'm
wizard.
I'm still surprised that like I cast that and named Drakes. People are like, oh, okay, and then like, how are you guys not aware of what's about to just happen?
So
I'm
essentially,
gonna
you're
draw 30 cards in the next 2 turns, and no one seems to be paying attention to that.
that opt is scrying you 1 and drawing you 2.
Right? Yeah.
Oh God.
Yeah, it's disgusting in that deck. But even if you're just playing, any kind of tribal deck that has maybe 20 plus creatures in it, it's just bonkers. So we skipped over talking. I don't think we thought it was bad. We just didn't jump over it. And
We probably read the 3 bad ones and we're like,
Maybe.
we're done.
yeah, right. That's enough. That's enough Kindred cards we're talking about.
Hey, there's 2 more. Go find them out for
Right,
yourself.
exactly. Traverse the Outland we all liked a lot in the show.
Yep.
Have you guys seen much of that card? I run it in 1 deck, and I always am glad to see it, but I can't say I've seen many people
I
playing
don't think
it.
I've seen that in quite a while.
I don't run it. I think I've seen it in a mono green deck, but again, kind of like Harvest Season, you need to adjust your mana base because it only gets basics.
Right.
And so it's really meant for like the mono green deck or maybe the 2-color green
Yeah.
something decks. But you need big creatures to make it worthwhile.
Right.
People should just be modifying their land bases anyways. We've been preaching that for
Sure,
a long
yeah.
time.
Right.
I wound up replacing Boundless Realms with this in my Mina and Den deck because I also felt like Boundless Realms just didn't. It only ever got me because I ramped that deck ramped so hard and I do so many landfall triggers. Boundless Realms just I run out of basics anyway, so I only ever wound up getting like 7 or 8. And all my creatures in that deck tend to go high because they get power and toughness, either from counters or based on how many lands I control for the most part, whatever. So this wound up just being a cheaper Boundless Realms for the most part in that deck. So I like it a lot, but I just have not seen many people cast it. Yeah, Disrupt Decorum is a card I always like seeing people pass. Or seeing people play. And that's where everyone's creatures get goaded, essentially.
Yep. All your opponent's creatures gain goad.
That is always, number one, it's fun. Whenever I've seen it cast, it always, makes something interesting happen. But it also really shakes up game states. And we touched on it on the show. We just mentioned it, it's interesting. But I've liked that a lot since I've seen it. Since then, coming out, particularly in red. If it was in black or something, I don't know if I'd like it as much.
I think the last time I saw that was in that mono red creature who goads as the commander too.
Yeah,
Grenzo.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then he's playing that one too, and I'm just like, stop.
I actually saw it this week in a Maelstrom Wanderer deck.
Oh, really?
Oh, that's gross.
Yeah, it wasn't off of Cascade, but it definitely
Okay.
was in his hand. He's like, I think I'm going to win. I'm like, yeah, you're going to win.
And we also had a bunch of other notable cards in there. We had the rest of the Kindred cycle. We had Balin Wandering Knight, Kess, who sees play in... Wait, is it Kess or a Nala that sees play in Legacy?
Kess.
Probably
Kess.
Kess.
Okay.
Because the ability to have flashback on every card.
Right, yeah.
Yep.
But Kess is a good commander unto herself as well. And we had a Curse cycle that I don't know if anyone really cares about.
Except one person this
week.
week.
One dude, right.
I really want to play those so bad, but they're not good.
Yeah, they're not. And Ramos has been really, really strong.
Yeah.
And I think this was also the show where we commented on how we did not love the Ur-Dragon.
And then like a month later.
We did. but we did come back a month later and be like, oh, we were wrong, Ur-Dragon. Because I think we all liked Arabo a lot, and we were like, Ur-Dragon's fine. Whereas Arabo, I've seen a couple Arabo decks.
I'm pretty sure I bashed the Ur-Dragon
Did you?
really
Yeah,
hard.
You did.
But you immediately came back like 3 weeks later, and you're like, I was wrong. Ur-Dragon's really, really good.
Oh, yeah, after sitting down and
After
getting
playing
waxed
it.
by it like 3
Yeah.
times in a row, I was just like, oh, okay, this card's stupid. Okay, I see how this works.
But I think out of that Dragon deck, the one I see the most is Ramos.
Well, it's because Ramos can be played in anything.
And you can make him do a lot of things, too, whether it's like Super Friends or...
Gates.
Yeah, there's all... Yeah, your Guild Gate deck, yeah.
Just you wait.
I liked C17. The tribal aspect was really
did
cool. And if you our listeners haven't, go listen to the Brainstorm Brewery episode 310.
I was just going to mention that, yeah.
They had Gavin Verhey on, and he was one of the head designers of this set.
Yep.
And he really goes into deep on how, we knew the roadmap, and we knew Ixalan was coming, and we were told, okay, you pick one of the tribes from Ixalan and then go ham with the other 3.
And we did comment on that on the show.
Yeah.
That it felt like the commander set was built to tie into the things that were going on in Standard at the time.
And it definitely was.
And he confirmed that on that show that was part of their plan. But that felt really synergistic. I liked that a lot that they did that. So hopefully moving forward we're going to see more of that because that was nice to see at the time.
But, overall, though, I think this commander set specifically provided more in the 99 cards than flashy generals.
Yeah,
it wasn't like C16 where we had Atraxa and the partners.
Yep.
This was more the Kindreds, the Curses, all these cards in the top 10 list, again, aren't generals. They're just
right. They're
utility
just
cards.
They're just good utility cards. So the last set of 2017 was the first one in the Ixalan block, and that's just Ixalan. Max, what are the most popular cards in EHREC from Ixalan?
So we're going to kick it off with Vanquisher's Banner, Growing Rights of Itlimoc, Unclaimed Territory, Field of Ruin, Thematic Compass, Sunbird's Invocation, Primal Amulet, Search for Azcanta, Dousing Dagger, and Spell Swindle.
I'm surprised to see Spell Swindle on that list.
That's a 5-mana counterspell, right?
That
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I
Makes
thought
big
it was.
treasure
gives you
tokens.
treasures equal to the
pretty
counter
much
spells
A
CMC.
mana drain.
Yeah.
It's a bad Mystic Confluence, kind of. I guess
I mean,
I like it as a poor man's mana drain.
it's fine. Yeah, it's a fine card. I'm just surprised it's in that many decks. So of these cards, we commented on a few of them in the show. We liked Primal Amulet and Thematic Compass. We liked Growing Rights a lot. We touched on Search for Azcanta, but we didn't dig into it too deeply. We're just like, oh, that's fine.
it's so good
I think that's the one we probably most underrated out of this set is Search for Azcanta.
for sure.
Because I think when we reviewed the set, it hadn't quite been out, so no one was running it in Standard. Because that became a real player in Standard.
And in Modern.
And it sees play in Modern as well. It's just a really useful value engine.
This card with Teferi is stupid.
Yeah, right.
Oh
exactly.
Lord, yeah.
So it's there's plenty of decks that care about the thing going to the graveyard too. It's really good in Sidisi. So
Or in standard
or just instead of
Jumpstart.
at the time. Right, exactly.
undergrowth, you
Yeah.
know,
Surveil.
Yeah,
Let's just flip it faster.
right?
right. Yeah, such a good card. So I think we kind of slept on that one a little bit. Field of Ruin, we didn't even comment on it. We didn't talk about it at all. And I will tell you what my thought process
We're horrible
was.
at reviewing sets.
Yeah, we must be. Well, number one, it's much more a standard / modern. It's modern, right? It sees modern play.
Feel the Ruin?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Sees it in both.
So that's a little bit. We're mostly reviewing from the commander point of view. I remember my thought process was at the time. I'm like, okay, well, Wasteland exists and Strip Mine exists already. Do I really care if this?
I suppose that was back before Strip Mine bumped up to like
right,
$40
right,
or
exactly.
whatever it's
And
at.
while Wasteland was already knocked back down to 20ish at the time
Yep.
as well, and I'm like, it was okay, but there's always that bad like encroaching wastes or something in every set anyway. So I didn't really think it through. I just like, okay, it's one more bad land destruction, because certainly in Standard they're not going to print a good land destruction land, and it's definitely not going to be better than Wasteland or Strip Mine or Ghost Quarter or Tectonic Edge anyway, or Dust Bowl. So I don't care. I think it was Dean Goody from Command Time who first kind of pointed out, well, yeah, but you get a land back, so yes, you're ramping everybody else, or the other two people at least, but you're not going down, and not going down isn't that much different than them going up one. That isn't entirely true, because it lets them fix if like someone needs a green, and that lets them get their green or their second white or whatever.
But you're not going to fire it off unless you absolutely have to.
Right, you're only going to use it to remove a Cabal Coffers or remove someone's flipped Growing Rights or whatever.
Stupid Mazaveth that I
Or a Maze of
absolutely
it that you
hate.
can't get through. So you're not just using it probably for mana denial. You're using it at a point in the game when maybe you don't care. If it's turn 10 and you're killing that Cabal Coffers, you probably don't care if those other two players get an extra land anyway. So that was my thought process. I think it's definitely a much better card than I think we probably gave it credit for. I don't run any of my decks though, because number one, I picked up so many Strip Mines over the years when they were $3 or $4. I don't just have Strip Mines.
Right.
I've got quite a few Dust Bowls. I like Dust Bowl because I can recur it. And then that third slot, I had some Ghost Quarters. I have Tectonic Edges, so I'm not sure it's not worth replacing those for me. But if you're a new player who drafted a bunch and you've got a dozen Field of Ruin sitting at home, it should be in your DH deck. Like, you need a couple land removal lands, and
it's also fairly cheap, and it's an uncommon, so it's easy to find. So, especially with how expensive Strip Mine and Wasteland are now,
yes,
it's definitely worth to go after.
If you were on a budget, put it in your deck, because you need land removal lands, and it's good enough to run for sure. Anything else that jumps out at you guys from this list?
No, I mean, I think these cards we talked about back then, and they're still around today. I mean, Vanquisher's Banner is probably one of the best tribal cards, quite a long time.
I'm surprised I don't see more Growing Rights in decks. Even if it doesn't flip for you, the first side of it coming into play, you
It's
look
great.
at the top four or something
Top
like
four,
that.
Yep.
That's phenomenal.
Yeah, I kind of am too a little bit, because it's always good whenever I play it. I'm happy with it. Whenever I've seen somebody else play it, it always feels strong.
It feels like a good bait card to me too, because if you play it early, get it out there, look at the top four, and then people are always going to be thinking, okay, when's it going to flip? When's it going to flip? Do I just kill it now as an enchantment? And then you're like, awesome, here comes my doubling season, or something else like that.
Which one is it? Is it Primal Amulet, or which one is it where it makes your instant sorceries cost less, and then you can flip it after 4 counters are on it?
I think that is Amulet. Give me 30 seconds.
I'm pretty sure it's Amulet. Pretty sure I played against that last night in Arena.
Primal Amulet, instant and sorcery spells. You cast cost 1 less to cast.
One thing, when we liked it, we talked about it and we liked it a lot. One thing that I've noticed with that card, this has happened to me at least twice when I've went to remove it and someone's at instant speed been like, I'm going to do this and I'm going to do that.
Just to flip it?
To flip it on the stack so my artifact removal spell doesn't hit it.
Yep.
Because that one's an easy one to flip and you can do it in response to something.
Yep. Once it has 4 or more counters on it, you may remove them and transform it.
Yeah. So that's been a nice like sub defensive thing on that card. That's been cool to see. That didn't really occur to me.
I do like all of these because they're May transforms. They weren't forced transforms.
They weren't a must.
There's only like 2 that are must from the first set of Ixalan.
Now, a couple of the ones are musts in the second
Yep.
set as well, but that's not in 2017, so we won't touch on them this time. There's also some other notable cards here if you go on the list. Legion's Landing, Tashana, Volna Butcher of Magan, Sanctum Seeker, Vraska's Contempt, which Max liked a lot in the show, and I think you still like.
I do like it in like mono black decks, but there's been so many good removal spells printed since then, like Windgrace's Judgment or Assassin's Trophy.
Yeah, it's
I still think it's better than both those because it exiles.
Yeah.
Exiles is useful.
It's also 4 mana though.
It's also 4 mana, right?
And you gain life. That is another upside.
Yeah. I like Assassin's Trophy more, but Windgrace's Judgment is really good, but I pulled out of the deck where I was running it just because I hated leaving 5 mana free. Even though it's good, I'm not saying it's bad. 5 mana to hit 2 or 3 permanents is almost always useful. But I just didn't like leaving the mana up for it.
Yep.
So Assassin's Trophy is really good, but Vraska's Contempt, yeah, that it's a player in Standard, but it does have competition it didn't have a year ago.
Right.
Chart a Course is only in 600 decks.
Should be in more.
I commented on the show. I like it, but I think people are still sleeping on it.
I really think people don't like it for the simple fact of it is a 2 mana draw 2 discard one 90% of the time. They don't realize that you just go, okay, I have nothing going on. I have this 1/1 sitting here. I'm just going to attack with it.
And it's 2 mana.
Who's going to block a 1/1 usually? They're just like, I'll take 1. You're like, yes, draw 2 cards for free.
Max is raising his hand.
I would. Because you just got to attack. You don't got to hit.
Right, yeah. All it cares about is the attack.
But 90% of people don't block the 1/1, so you're also dishing out the damage.
And there's plenty of decks where discarding a card is useful.
Yep.
There's situations where you're like, I'm going to cast this main phase because I want to put this thing in the graveyard so I can reanimate it or do something with it. Or pitch
discard an Arc-like Phoenix to your graveyard.
Or your anger or something like that. I mean, like there's a lot of situations where that having the option to intentionally choose a discard is good. So I'm really surprised that card does not see more play. Because I liked it then and I like it a lot now. The other one I'm surprised at is Costly Plunders in 411 decks. Max likes that card.
I love that card.
That's when we sack a creature or an artifact.
To draw 2. Yep.
And the reason the comment there is Ultra's Reap, where you just sacrifice a creature, is the exact same card. Ultra's Reap is the same card, instant speed, same mana cost, sack a creature to draw 2 cards. Costly Plunder's a strictly better version of Ultra's Reap. Ultra's Reap's in 3,000 decks.
Now here's the question I'm going to pose to you. How many of these decks have been updated, though? That's the thing too, because with this printing within the last year, they might not have updated that they put in this one over the other one.
Or you just don't think about it. They're like, well, they've just got in their deck, and they just don't make the mental connection that, well, I guess it is better. So I'm surprised at that, but there's probably explanations for that too. Because if you're not somebody who's like reading the cards really carefully and thinking about it, it's easy to leave something in your deck and then a month later be like, oh, wait a minute, because I've done that before. One good example is I didn't run Nissa's Pilgrimage. I think is that the one that has Spell Mastery?
Yes.
Yep. In my Recce deck for a long period of time, where it's in that deck because all I can fetch is Forest anyway. It's a Cultivate or a Kodama's Reach because I can only get Forest, whereas those other 2 let you fix mana technically. But if I have Spell Mastery, it's better than those 2. So there's no reason not to run it over one of those 2 or at least alongside them. And for the longest time, I had those 2 and didn't have it in there. So just because I wasn't like, it's easy to not think through those things in some decks sometimes.
Trust me, I know.
So, but that's a really good card too. We like the set a lot.
The big thing I'm surprised is I don't see many dinos in decks. Now, I'm not saying like a dinosaur tribal deck, but a lot of the dinosaurs have really good abilities baked into them.
They do things that just on their own that are probably worth running them.
And you don't see a whole lot of them.
Yeah.
The only one I really see is the one with Ascend.
With Ascend? Yeah.
But that's from the next set, so we technically shouldn't talk about
Ripjaw Raptor. A
Yeah.
4-mana, 4/5, whenever it's dealt damage, you draw a card.
Yeah.
In green, that's phenomenal.
Rampaging for Acidon. Whenever a creature enters the battlefield,
Yes, I know. It
And
got
then-
banned from me in Standard.
I
We
know,
don't
I
talk
know.
about that card.
But that's a good card though. Like there's enough of those that are decent. But I think people see Dinosaur and immediately assume Dinosaur Tribal and stop going beyond that.
Enrage was a cool mechanic.
It was.
Yeah, I liked it a lot. So, we liked the set as a whole. I still like it a lot. I'm
Yeah.
still a fan of Ixalan, and there's a lot of good cards in there for Commander. Now I know in Standard the problem. See, I think the part of the problem was the perception of Ixalan was it was a weak set, but I think that's a little bit.
That's comparing it to the
That's
prior
comparing
sets.
it to Kaladesh,
Yep.
which was super
'Cause
strong.
They didn't mix well together was the
No.
thing.
So like by comparison, it looked weak, but I don't think that means it was a weak set. And I think you're seeing a lot more of the cards see play now too. Now that it's no longer competing with Kaladesh stuff that was semi broken.
Yep.
So I like it a lot for EDH. I think it's a good set. I think it kicked us a lot of good cards. So overall, looking back at 2017, do you guys think you did a decent job evaluating stuff, or are there things you're going to pay attention to more going forward?
I really don't know. I think it's all based on set by set.
Yeah.
Can I answer this during your exit question?
Sure.
Okay.
That works for me.
Because I have something I wanted to say about that.
Okay. Well, then I'll ask my exit question here before we sign out. What card, not just from this year, but ever, have you done the biggest turnaround on? So you either loved it and now you just hate it, or you dismissed it and now you think it's amazing. Is there one card that jumps out at you for that?
Niv Mizzet Perun, whatever.
The
how
new
you
one.
pronounce
The
it.
new one. New
I have a sneaking suspicion I'm going to have to go back and listen, but I'm pretty sure I bashed it hard.
We all did.
And
I
that
think
card
we just-
is broken.
I think we were just bored. I think we said it's like the other two Niv Mizzets, who cares? So we kind of dismissed
though.
it.
It is
And-
not.
And we dismissed it because of the trip.
The casting
Cast.
cost is tough
Yes.
too.
The casting cost is tough in it, but it's nothing like the other Niv Mizzet.
It's so good.
It's really good.
So good.
How about you, Max?
Gideon's Intervention.
Okay.
I was super hyped on this card. So it's a 4-mana enchantment. When it enters the battlefield, name a card name. Your opponents can't cast spells with that name, and you can't be attacked by that spell. So if you name a creature, if you name someone's general, you can't be attacked by it.
Right.
Or if you name Capsize, people can't cast Capsize or Soul Ring or whatever you want to name. I was really hyped on this for Brago because I could reset it when I needed to change when the threat assessment changed. But it's now become just a 4-mana dead card in my deck because I'm just going to combo and lock the game out, not be worried about getting hit in the face by something or being worried about a Supreme Verdict or something. I would rather just put something else that's going to get me more value long game.
Yep, that card definitely, I believe, in multiplayer is not as good as 1v1.
Right.
1v1, it's phenomenal. If you can do something to kill their commander, put it back in the command zone, and then you play that and just lock them out of it. Because hardly anyone runs enchantment removal in 1v1. So
Right. Yeah. Okay.
What about you, Dana?
I think Field of Ruin is definitely one of the ones that I just dismissed. Heroic Convention I didn't pay attention to. Field of Ruin I at least paid attention to, but dismissed it right away. So that was probably definitely one of the ones in recent memory that I think is much better than I gave it credit for. And to answer my previous question about things I learned from the year, I'm going to comment on that briefly. And going back and listening and just thinking about this a lot, I think cards I do a good job evaluating, generally speaking. There weren't a lot of ones that I liked a lot that wound up being bad or what I'm not liking in hindsight. But there's enough ones where I got that initial kind of first impression in that first 10 seconds and then decided I didn't like it or thought it was boring and then never went back to it, didn't think about it again after that point in time until I saw someone play it. So my goal, I think, moving forward when I do these set reviews or look at these cards is to try to not be so dismissive of cards right away, particularly if it's one that other people are commenting on and I'm like, I don't get it, I don't like it. I think I need to wonder why people are commenting on it besides just me and maybe look at it a little bit closer.
And see, to that point, what I like in our Slack, that's exactly kind of what has been happening is, hey, Ravnica got spoiled, and someone's like, hey, this card looks really good, and you have 10 people say, no, that's going to be really bad, and you have 10 people say, no, here is why it would be really good,
Yeah.
and they give you 4 or 5 examples, so it really lets you not be dismissive immediately on a card.
Right, yes.
what do you think about this for our next set review, which will be Ravnica
Allegiances.
something like
Yeah.
that? Yep. So something, because I do a lot of fantasy football.
Okay.
and it's something they do called sleeper picks. What do you guys think about doing like a sleeper card for our next set review?
Yeah, for sure.
Something
I'm
that's
on board.
off the wall. You're looking at it hard and you're trying to think this could be good, but everyone else is going to think it's bad. So this will be your sleeper pick and see how it goes. You know,
A year from now.
Yeah.
I like it.
I like that,
We'll do
too.
that too.
Good
Yeah.
idea, Chris.
I am on board. All right. We'll be back next week. Until then, I'm Dana.
I'm Max.
And I'm Chris.